Hello, YouTube. So I had this crazy dream last night that I just thought I'd make a short video about. Well, I hope it's short. I hope I don't linger on too long. Um, it was a very crazy, weird dream, as most dreams are, but a vivid one. And basically, I was this investigator, like this police investigator in Hungary. Um, and what had happened was is that there was this murder, but I wasn't there to solve the murder. The murder had actually already been solved. What I was there to find out was to find out the motivation of the people involved in this murder, to figure out like how something like this had happened. And what had happened was it was this little kid around like 6 years old or whatever, and he was basically abused. He had broken bones, a shattered skull, but he like didn't die instantly. What had happened was is that his caregivers had like put him under the floorboards of this apartment where he slowly just kind of bled and starved to death. But the thing about it was that in my dream, everyone in the building knew that this was happening, knew that the kid was being abused, and even when he was under the floorboard and everything, had heard him crying for days. This is all in my dream now. Heard him crying for days, and no one intervened. And so I was sent there to, the parents had already been arrested and prosecuted and everything, but I was there to find out the motivation of the people that were in the building and why didn't they help this kid? Why did not one person call the police or call anyone to intervene on behalf of this kid? Um, and then after that had happened, I couldn't figure it out. I failed to figure out like why that had happened. I decided, I know this is so weird. I decided to work for Newt Gingrich's campaign. And so we're traveling to different places. He's giving all these talks, and one place after another, it's just doomsday, doomsday, gray skies, clouds, everything is bad, everything is shitty. Until finally we're at this just gymnasium, and he's giving the same old speech about like just how horrible everything is. And I'm like, everything is not horrible. Like, yeah, bad things happen, but life is not horrible. And I quit. And he was like, you can't quit on me. And I did. And I don't remember the rest of the dream. I think that was pretty much it, which is funny because then when I woke up this morning, two more of his people quit. He's had a problem with his campaign. People quit. But I know what the whole dream came from, and primarily it came from, of course, stuff that's been happening in the news, Newt Gingrich and his campaign sucking. But then the other part about the murder and stuff, I know what that happened, where that came from as well. It came from the fact that I'm reading a history book by Howard Zinn, and it's American history, but it starts off at the very beginning of the story with Christopher Columbus, and for despite popular belief, Christopher Columbus did not discover America. He was a European invader. He was the pre-Hitler. He was Hitler before Hitler was born. That's a train, by the way. He was a mass murderer, pretty much. He was a slaver and a mass murderer, and I'm reading about like all the horrible things that happened under his command, and I've been wondering for like the past couple days. That train is so funny, but wondering for the past couple days, like how could people like even like during the Nazis, how did people just allow these evil things to happen? So that's a question that's like kind of really been bothering me, because overall, although there's been atrocities. I mean, there's bad things that happen in the world, and then there's like downright atrocities that we remember because they're so shocking. They're so historically um, unfathomable that they just stay in our collective minds for generations and generations and generations. And and so that's kind of one of the things that I've been pondering for the past couple of days. But overall, life is pretty good, and I don't just mean my life. I mean just being alive, period. Because the one of the things that kind of struck me about the whole Columbus thing is reading about the indigenous people that were on the island that's currently Dominican Republic and Haiti. One of the things that struck me is how even the people that recorded history, they didn't know they were recording it. Well, I guess they knew they were recording history, but the people that were kind of documenting how these indigenous people were, is that these people really didn't have material things. They didn't, compared to the Western world, even at that time, they didn't have any of the technology. These people walked around naked, but these were happy people. They were happy, peaceful people. Um, and they didn't have anything. So if people, and you kind of see that even today in like very poor countries, just because a country is poor, it doesn't mean that the people are unhappy. While here in the United States, we are fortunate to have untold luxuries compared to the rest of the world, and yet we have people that are really, really, really unhappy and blame everything. They blame, I mean, from the biggest things to the smallest thing. They blame the world, they blame other countries, they blame their own country, they blame the government, they blame, their state government, federal government, and the state government. They blame their local government. They blame their community. They blame their family. They blame everybody for why they're not happy. Um, and I kind of discovered, a long time ago, and this is just, you can find this in many philosophies and many religions and many, secular or religious or spiritual, whatever, that, you cannot find happiness from outside of yourself. Any happiness that you find from outside of yourself is just going to be temporary. You have to learn to just be a happy person, period. And then once that happens, it doesn't mean bad shit ain't gonna happen to you, but you cannot control the outside world. Bad shit is just always gonna happen. But despite that, you can still be a happy person regardless of your circumstances. And so, it it's kind of amazing that that's not a new thought, that's not a new idea, but the majority of people kind of really don't get that. They don't get that. Like, I remember years ago I met this woman and it had to have been maybe like 3 years ago or so. And this was a coworker. She didn't stay here very long, but basically she had found out that she had HIV years and years and years ago, and this was when people were still kind of dying from it and so forth. And basically she just bounces around from place to place. She finds jobs where she, wherever she lands, and then she stays there for a little while and she leaves. And she actually told me this. She didn't tell, our employers that, but she had told me that. It's not a good thing to tell your employers that, oh, I'm not going to be here very long, but that's pretty much, what she did. And so I asked her, you like, so do you not know anyone at these places? She goes, no. She goes, what'll happen is, some days I just wake up, and if I'm done with the area that I'm in, I. Just pick up and move. And I was like, wow, that's kind of really just brave. I'm impressed by that, because I could never do that without a plan, without knowing people, or like having some kind of safety net to wherever I'm going. And I was like, because, she was like, why do you need those things? I was like, well, because what if you need help? And she goes, Joseph, she goes, you would think that by watching the news and reading newspapers and everything, that this world is this horrible, hostile place where, that you're constantly in danger. She goes, but, it has been my experience, and that from bouncing around from here to there, that people are generally good. People are generally nice. There's a couple bad apples. There's a couple bad, people out there that kind of ruin a lot of things. But she goes, people are basically good. She goes, and I have never been a single place where there was not someone that has offered me help. And that was really, kind of one of those kind of small but life-changing ideas that always kind of stuck with me. Because I do totally believe that people are basically good. That the majority of people on this planet, the 6 billion plus people on this planet, are good people. Even in countries where you see crazy shit happening, in these war-torn countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, the Congo, even where these horrible things, people are basically good. It's just a couple bad people, mainly bad people that have some sort of power or weapons or something that ruin it for everyone else. But the majority of people in this world are good people. They may be misguided, they may make mistakes, they may make bad choices, but their motivation is the same as everyone else's, which is just to find happiness. No one, people do things to make themselves unhappy, but they don't do it knowingly. People don't knowingly do things to make themselves miserable for the most part. So I guess that's the moral of, I shouldn't say moral, because moral means I'm trying to teach you something, not really teaching you something, kind of voicing my opinion. So I guess the lesson that the dream in was re-emphasizing to me is that, if you're unhappy, you know, that's, I don't want to say fault, because fault seems to blame, but you're responsible for your own happiness is the lesson. Bad stuff is going to happen, bad things are always going to happen, but you're responsible for your own happiness. And that's just, I guess, a good reminder for me, a good reminder for everyone, that it is not your country's fault, it is not your government's fault, it is not the political leader's fault, it's not your employer's fault, it's not your job or your family or your friend's fault if you're not happy. It's not your community's fault. You're responsible for your own happiness, and that's it. If you're not happy, then you need to change that, because it's not any of those external things. It's you. So find happiness, and you'll find happiness regardless of the things that happen. I know that's been true for me, and if you take it or leave it. But that's all I got to say. This is gone on long enough.